I now recognize the member from the Commonwealth of Virginia who has such great vision and brings such strategic vision to this committee, Ms. Kiggans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our panelists for being here. I have the privilege of representing Virginia's 2nd Congressional District, so Hampton Roads, home to Huntington Ingalls, just outside my district, and most importantly, so much ship repair and shipbuilding people. So listening to you all, it's a lot. I wish it was a little more positive direction, but I think there's some important lessons for Congress to learn. We can't keep doing what we're doing, I think, is the bottom line, and it is encouraging to have the President of the United States stand up to State of the Union and talk about prioritizing shipbuilding. The fact that we have now a new Office of Shipbuilding, these are all steps in the right direction, but I think we're going to need to see some big overarching changes. And what does that look like? I mean, the ideas you've talked about today between the technology, we can build unmanned aircraft using robotics. Why can't we do better with especially ship components? I mean, the design aspect, I have a son who studied naval architecture at the Naval Academy. I know it was one of the few schools that they actually have that degree. So what can we do, to incentivize kids just to go to the design piece? The labor challenges, it's hard for me to listen to you all talk about. I sat on the Recruitment Retention Quality of Life Task Force that we did from this committee last year, where we looked at all of those things for our active duty side. We improved the pay and compensation, we improved the housing, we improved childcare, the health care, the spouse employment. It's the same issues that you all are talking about. And we took 29 amendments that came out of the Senate to the tune of $5 billion that we're making sure in this year's continuing resolution that we're passing, that we're going to hopefully pass today, because it's so meaningful to us, that work that we did, because we cannot keep this all-volunteer force without those quality of life changes for our active duty. But the same can be said, not just for shipbuilding and ship repair, but for our MSC task as well. And we know that with our Navy, we can't do the job that we need to do without our Military Sealift Command, which is also important in my district. We've had the opportunity to visit, but we can incorporate these changes across the board. It's interesting that the geographic issue, living along the coastline is historically expensive. I can speak to that from Hampton Roads area, but can we build components in places like the Midwest? I know we're doing it in Virginia and Danville. We've got a great center, but when we take people out of Danville, where they're from, and move them, to other parts where there may be shipbuilding, it's a harder transition. So what does that modular component look like, and that build? I think there's ways that we can do things. But I want to talk specifically, and we printed this poster about the Military Sealift Command, and there are so many ships that we can be building that are not warships. I understand, building the warships domestically and what that looks like and our challenges that we're going to work through. But on the MSC side, like for example, we used to have 8 AOEs. We're down to 2. We're down to 2 of these. These are, if we don't have ships and food and supplies, we can't keep the fleet at sea. So I'm really focused, and I think we're leaving these guys kind of out of the equation sometimes. But how can we do better on this side of the house? Is it something, I know a few of you have spoken about the South Koreans specifically and involving some of our allied partners, but what does that look like? What is it? Is it a place we need to pursue, that we need to think outside the box and be using our allied partners, especially when it comes to this MSC type fleet? Or I can't do it all domestically, so what can I do? Because I want them as soon as I can get them. But are there any of you can speak to just especially the use of allied partners for things like Military Sealift Command?
If it's all right, I'll take an answer that question. Again, I'm not in the business of making recommendations, but I would sort of answer this question this way: is that if you believe you need a larger fleet and you need to recapitalize both the warship fleets as well as the Military Sealift Command, then I think that, and given that the capacity of current shipbuilding yards is full, looking at the question of our allies being able to supply some of these types of ships is something that is worth considering. There's all kinds of advantages and disadvantages of bringing the allies and partners into the shipbuilding portfolio, whether domestic or overseas. But in December, President Trump, he made a suggestion along those lines in an interview with the press, and it seems like the public would benefit from that. The Japanese and the Koreans in particular are build outstanding ships that fall into the Military Sealift Command portfolio. If you're talking about ro-ro ships and cargo ships and things like that, some of the more specialized ships under the Military Sealift Command might still be better built in American yards, but it is at least worth having that public debate and having that conversation about whether others need to be brought into it, not only for Navy but also Coast Guard and icebreakers. That would be another place to sort of have that conversation as well.
I agree. Do any of you others have thoughts on that?
Well, in my 8 seconds, I'll just say committed to working with MARAD and ensuring that we prioritize up Military Sealift Command and the build of those ships. I think, rising tide raises all boats, and certainly the commercial sector getting stronger is going to help us too in what we're doing in the defense sector. So all committed.
Thank you. I think it's warrants a further discussion, but thank you so much for your opinion. I yield back.